If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That was the stark warning from Prime Minister Mark Carney in January 2026. Just 2 months later, a quiet announcement from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency showed us the first move in a new game. On March 12th, after 2 decades, Canada officially broke the American monopoly on fresh potatoes in Mexico. This wasn't a loud trade war. It was a nearly invisible strategic move, a quiet redrawing of our economic lifelines. What you witnessed is the first chapter of a new playbook Canada is writing to secure its place at the table. This video decodes that playbook. It's a story that starts with a potato but ends with a blueprint for strategic resilience in a fragmenting world. But to truly grasp why this playbook is so vital, we first have to examine the gilded cage we've built for ourselves. This gilded cage is a structural vulnerability hidden in plain sight. For Canada's potato industry, it looked like a golden opportunity, but beneath the surface, it functioned as a single point of failure. To understand this, we first need to look at the board. For over 2 decades, the United States held what was effectively total monopolistic control over Mexico's fresh potato market. This isn't an exaggeration, it's a documented fact. A report from the USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service confirms that for 20 years, the U.S. was Mexico's sole supplier. Not a single major competitor broke through. This reality created a powerful gravitational pull for Canadian producers. The path of least resistance led directly into the American system, which then became the primary gateway for our potatoes. The numbers from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada for the 2024-2025 marketing year are stark. A staggering 93% of all of Canada's fresh potato exports were sent directly to the United States. From a purely tactical view, this might seem efficient, but from a strategic one, it's a high-risk bet. When more than 90% of a critical export relies on one country, the relationship is no longer a balanced exchange. It becomes an asymmetrical dependency. Any political or economic tremor from that single partner, a sudden trade dispute, a new agricultural policy, even a logistical bottleneck at the border, can send a shockwave through an entire Canadian industry. And the scale of that industry is immense. This isn't a niche market. According to Statistics Canada, Prince Edward Island alone produces about 2.18 billion pounds of potatoes annually. That is a massive economic engine, a lifeline for entire communities, all tethered to the stability of a single export channel. This is the architecture of the gilded cage, comfortable, profitable, but dangerously fragile. With a structural vulnerability this massive, a head-on confrontation is strategic suicide. So, how do you escape a cage when the bars themselves are made of gold? You don't try to break them. You find a door that no one else knew was there. That door has a name. It is a quiet, asymmetric strategy we can call the Void Filler's Playbook. This isn't a strategy of noisy trade wars or direct confrontation. It's a calculated series of moves designed to build resilience by circumventing an opponent's strength and exploiting a weakness they don't even realize they have. Its logic can be broken down into 3 precise steps. The first step of the playbook is to avoid direct confrontation. A core principle of asymmetric strategy is never to fight your opponent on their chosen ground. Canada did not attempt to outcompete the United States in its logistical stronghold, the northern states of Mexico. That territory is easily and cheaply served by American trucks, making a direct challenge a fool's errand. Instead, Canada's planners recognize that true strength lies in knowing where not to compete. This leads directly to the second and most crucial step, identify a strategic void. Canada's strategists looked past the obvious and found a gap in the American monopoly. This void was southern Mexico. It's a region where the U.S. truck-based distributions network becomes stretched. inefficient, and costly. Here, distance erodes the American advantage, and in that erosion, a Canadian strength emerges. As Ray Keenan, the CEO of Rollo Bay Holdings, outlined, this is where Canada's own maritime ports become a powerful asset. Shipping potatoes by sea directly to southern Mexico becomes not just viable, but a competitive advantage. It creates, in his words, a different area of competition. But wait, stop. If you think this is just a logistics play, a simple matter of sea routes versus highways, you are missing the most elegant part of the playbook. This is the detail that elevates the strategy from a clever tactic to an act of economic jujitsu. The third step is to fill the void with a differentiated advantage. This is where precision replaces brute force. The plan isn't simply to dump the same potatoes into a new market. Canadian producers are strategically introducing potato varieties that are not common or widely available in these southern regions. They're not just fighting for existing customers, that they are creating entirely new demand. This entire architecture of resilience was formalized through quiet, pragmatic diplomacy. The March 12, 2026 agreement between Canada's Food Inspection Agency and its Mexican counterpart wasn't a sudden breakthrough. It was the deliberate result of years of regulatory cooperation under the Canada-Mexico Action Plan. Each step was incremental, consistent, and happening just beneath the surface. So there it is. Avoid the fight, find the void, and fill it with something different. This void filler's playbook isn't just about potatoes. In what other industry or situation have you seen Canada or your own country use a similar clever strategy to build resilience without direct confrontation? Share the most interesting example you can think of below. This potato playbook is a masterclass in asymmetric strategy, but it's not happening in a vacuum. It's a single calculated move in a much bigger game. A game that began the moment the world's trade referee was taken off the field. That referee was the World Trade Organization, or more precisely, its highest court, the appellate body. And in December 2019, its whistle went silent. The United States blocked the appointment of new judges, leaving the body without the required quorum to settle disputes. The system that had governed global commerce for decades was effectively paralyzed. Without a credible referee, the game of global trade begins to revert to its most basic state: raw power politics. For middle powers like Canada, this is the most dangerous scenario possible. It's how you go from being a player at the table to being an item on the menu. But here's the quiet irony of this moment, the kind of strategic pattern you only see when you look beneath the surface. The very instability created by one great power's actions became the precise catalyst for a new kind of order to emerge. Realizing they had to start writing their own rules, a coalition of middle powers began to form. This isn't a minor group, it's a network of now over 34 members, including powerful blocs like the European Union and the CPTPP countries. Together, they represent nearly 1/3 of the global economy. They didn't just issue statements, they became architects. In April 2020, they established a parallel structure, the Multi-Party Interim Appeal Arbitration Arrangement, the MPIA. It's a voluntary arbitration system, but it is a lifeline, a quiet, determined effort to keep rules-based trade alive. And this is where Canada's role becomes crystal clear. At the World Economic Forum in January 2026, Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't just diagnose the problem, he positioned Canada as a bridge builder, a crucial link between these emerging economic alliances dedicated to forging a predictable environment for trade. He was outlining the blueprint for survival in this new era, and that brings us back to potatoes. That clever deal to ship potatoes to southern Mexico is not just an isolated business win. It is a tangible piece of this much larger game. It is a single move from the void filler's playbook, executed on a new chessboard, made possible because Canada is now one of the architects writing the new rules. So with the old rules shattered and new alliances being forged by these middle powers, what does the actual blueprint for Canada's resilience look like? How do you scale one smart win with potatoes into a national strategy for sovereignty? The blueprint for Canada's resilience isn't a single document locked in a vault. It's a dynamic process. The potato deal isn't the blueprint itself, but it is our first clear look at its design. The optimistic vision is that each of these individual strategic wins helps construct a flexible middle power mesh. Think of it this way. Every successful deal, like the one for potatoes in Mexico, does more than just move a product. It builds regulatory trust. It establishes technical familiarity between agencies. This is critical because it dramatically lowers the transaction costs and political friction for the next deal, perhaps in a completely different sector. A win for agriculture today paves a smoother road for biotech or clean energy tomorrow. Over time, these individual threads of trust and access weave together into a web of overlapping pacts, a decentralized network that can absorb economic shocks far better than any single rigid alliance. However, intellectual honesty is crucial here. A sober assessment requires us to look at the scale of the challenge with clear eyes. Even with this victory, the numbers tell a story of profound concentration. 62% of all Canadian agricultural exports are still destined for the United States. And for fresh potatoes, that figure is an astonishing 93%. On its own, this single deal provides only marginal risk reduction. This is where we must refine our understanding of its true value. The power of the Mexico potato deal is not in the immediate volume it moves. Its true power is as a replicable blueprint. This is the entire purpose of the Void Filler's Playbook. The challenge now is to apply this model again and again across many different sectors to achieve genuine portfolio level diversification. We can see this already happening on other fronts. Canada already quietly supplies 34% of Mexico's processed and frozen potato market. True diversification is a multi-front effort built on existing successes. Ultimately, this is the new reality. The fragmentation of the oldest system is creating space for something new to emerge. It's a more adaptable, more resilient, and more sovereign future. But it is one that countries like Canada must build for themselves, one smart deal at a time. Understanding these quiet moves, these incremental but consistent shifts in the global chess game is essential for navigating what comes next. If you want to continue this deep analysis into the forces quietly redrawing our national future, ensure you are subscribed. There is much more to uncover.